This is a brief introduction to how to use GitHub to manage issues and keep your team on track. So here's the Corpus Christi homepage on GitHub, and I'm going to click through to the one and only repository that's there for the time being. And the default view that you get, of course, is the source code, and you can see the top-level README file and so forth. But the interesting portion is the issues list here in terms of keeping track of things that need to be done. So issue is a super generic term. It can be an entry for a defect repair. It could be an enhancement. It could be a new feature. It could be, very large rocks that need to be divided into smaller pieces to be implemented. But it's kind of the generic term that GitHub uses for sort of a to-do list. Here's the list that's current for Corpus Christi. You can see there's 141 open issues. There's a bunch of different ways to filter these issues. So the current filter says that it is an issue and it is open. Open basically just means it needs to be dealt with still. And here's one I added just the other day. Shouldn't be passing password to person constructor. Let me click through that, and you can see that there's a fair amount of detail that's available for each of these issues. So what this was is, as I was reviewing the code the other day, I found kind of the vestigial remains of a password field in the constructor for a person object in the code, and we've made a change away from that. So I think this is just something that needs to be removed. But the idea here is you give an issue a kind of a meaningful title that's enough information so that you don't have to go remind yourself what it is by reading in the detailed descriptions. There's also an issue number, this sharp sign 650. When GitHub sees numbers like that, it will usually turn them into a link that takes you directly to that issue. So that's really handy. You can see here that it's in an open status, who opened it, and then there's kind of a history of the progress that's been made on this issue. So you can see here there's a description in API commands.people.py. The person constructor is called with the password argument. This is basically just a way for you to provide some additional information about what you're talking about. So the title should be an easy way to remember what's going on here, or to pick it out of a list. But then if you want more details, there should be enough information inside the issue itself to give you more information. There's also a chain. There aren't any additional comments here yet, but there's a chain of comments that you can add to this. So as you're working with another person or with your team lead on an issue, if you have questions, you can certainly obviously go to them directly or talk to them over Slack or something. But a good way to kind of keep a record of what's happened with this issue is to just add additional comments going forward. Over here on the right side, the issue allows you to associate various attributes with it. So one of the things that you can do is assign an issue to somebody, and there's a convenient way of adding yourself to an issue. And you can also add other members of the team to the issue if they're appropriate. So basically, you want to have assignees that are going to be able to contribute to or that are monitoring this issue. And oftentimes, when you're ready to do a new task in the project, you're going to just grab the top issue off the list and then assign yourself to that issue to indicate to people that you're working on it. There's also a labeling mechanism here. These are kind of like tags that you can give to the issues, and that can be used for filtering stuff or indicating urgency, that sort of thing. So there's a drop down here that has a variety of tags that we've established for the project. So here, I've basically, the important tag here is the user interface, because that's where it's taking place. There's also a connection to projects here, which we'll talk about in a second. And then there's a few other things going forward that we're not really making use of. Milestone allows you to tie the issue to a point in time when you want to have it completed by, and so forth. So issues are really at the heart of how we're going to keep track of progress and to-do lists and what's next in the project. Now that's fine, but as you can see, there's quite a lot of issues current, and depending on the type of project and the amount of time that people are devoting to repairing defects and adding enhancements and stuff, there might be none, there might be a lot. But in any case, it's a little bit difficult to kind of keep track of priorities and who's supposed to do what by just looking at this one big list. So GitHub has another feature called projects that allows you basically to do, it's kind of like a Trello board if you've used Trello, where you can have different swim lanes that correspond to tasks that need to be done or that are in process or that are completed. And what you do is you group issues according to those projects. So you can see here in Corpus Christi, there's a collection of different projects. some of which you'll recognize here. Internationalization. This is a list of issues that are open for the internationalization part of the software. There's things for the events module. There's things for the home group module. Things for the people module, and so forth. And you can see there's a kind of a progress bar down here, which indicates the kind of the fraction of the issues that have been set up in this project that are completed versus the total number of issues that are in that project. So let's take a look at the courses module project, and we'll immediately see that we get this kind of Trello style board, and this is a really common configuration that's totally workable. We've got a swim lane that's called to do, another one that's called doing, and a third one that's called done. And then in these swim lanes are little cards that are representative of a single issue from the issues list that we talked about earlier. So these are all things that are teed up to be done for the courses module. And what you would do when you were ready to start working on something is you would take this card and just drag it into the doing column. And that's just an indication that somebody's working on this project. Currently, it doesn't tell us who's working on that project. So what you really want to do is assign yourself to this issue so that you'll show up here in the card as the person who's responsible for this issue. Then you're going to work that issue until you've completed it, whatever it is, a defect repair or a feature enhancement. And when that's been approved and merged into the development branch, ready to go to production, you'll then take the card and pull it over into the done column. So at any given time, you can kind of see, what's going on right now, what we've completed, who's working on it, that kind of stuff, by keeping track in the project view. I'm going to put this back so that it gets done. Another important thing here is the listing of the items in particularly the to-do column is really important. The goal here is to always have the next most important thing to be done as the top thing in the to-do list. So if you're a team lead, your job really is to make sure that you've got the right issues in this swim lane, and that you've listed them in the right order so that the next time somebody on your team is ready to start working on something new because they've completed a previous issue, they're just going to go to the top thing in this list, grab it, assign themselves to it, and drag it over into the doing column. And that's an indication to you and the rest of the team that issue is being attended to and who's working on it in case people have questions or comments. So it's no more difficult than that. To manage the issues. Of course, you can add new issues, associate them with projects, prioritize them in the to-do swim lane as appropriate. Just one other quick example here of a slightly more elaborate project layout. So I'm going to go back to the projects list. And then here's the home group module, which was something that a couple students worked on this past summer. And we had a little bit more elaborate setup for the swim lanes. We had a column called on hold, which is basically just kind of things that we were thinking about, things that we were talking about. We haven't really kind of decided whether or not to actually include them in the project yet. We had the to-do list, which is exactly the same as what we've talked about before. And then that team chose to call, instead of saying doing, they called it in progress. So there's an in progress swim lane. You can see there's actually one that's still in progress from the summer that didn't quite get completed. And then because our process involves a pull request, where when the developer is done implementing the feature or making the repair, they submit a pull request that allows us to review the changes that were made in the commits associated with that issue. So when they were ready for, in this case, when they were ready for me to do a pull request or to review the pull request, they'd move the card over into the submitted pull request lane. And then what I do is, use that as a way to kind of keep track of which pull requests they want me to review. And then once I was satisfied that the pull request was ready to go, I would merge the pull request into the development branch and then move the card over here into the completed swim lane. So this is just a slightly more elaborate set of steps here that make it a little bit easier to kind of keep track of the details of what's going on in the project. However, I would suggest that, particularly if you're new to using pull requests and actions and these project swim lanes, just stick with something that's fairly simple, like this courses module layout with the to-do and the doing and the done.